Ready? All right, 1, 2.
Thank you for coming today. It's really important that we learn about our health care and how it's being destroyed. Because this rally, Kill the Bill, rally and die-in, is we're protesting another assault on our health care with the latest and ever-changing Graham-Cassidy health care repeal. Health care is 1/5 of our economy. But it's not just that it's our economy, it is our lives. It is our families' lives. It's our quality of work, our quality of life for our neighbors, our friends, our children, our parents, and ourselves. We do not want to go back to the time when health care was really a nightmare. Back when the time, if you lost your job, you lost your health care. If you worked 2 jobs and you still couldn't afford health care. If you were 1 diagnosis away from bankruptcy. Insurance companies did not have to pay for mental illness or substance abuse treatment. Insurance companies could deny coverage if you were a diabetic, had a stroke, a heart attack, cancer, or any other condition they did not want to cover. And if they did cover it, your premiums were out of sight. It was a time when parents could not afford the medical bills of their special needs children. And seniors, that's me, and their children faced nursing home bills that could not be paid. We don't want to go back to that time. Today we have speakers who will describe how this Graham-Cassidy bill will impact health care. Whether you have employer-based health care, Medicare, Medicaid, you purchase your own health insurance, this bill can harm you and our economy. Our first speaker is Jim Rapp, who is a health care advocate. So I'd like to introduce Jim, who will be explaining some of the key points of health care insurance.
Thank you, Sarah. As Sarah said, my name is Jim Rapp. I consider myself a reasonably intelligent person. I'm well educated and well traveled, and I've been involved in politics for over 40 years, been involved in healthcare issues for over 30 years. I'm a 30-year HIV/AIDS survivor, and I'm just now recovering from my 4th cancer surgery. And I'm scared. Folks, I'm really, really scared. Not just for our health care, for our society, and for our democracy. Each one of us must recommit to getting up each morning, continuing this fight and resisting. But now more than ever, we need to do one more thing. We all need to learn to love each other just a little bit more, to care for each other just a little bit deeper, show a little more compassion to our brothers and sisters, to cherish our loved ones a little bit deeper, and to hug our kids a little bit tighter. We are in a time in our country that we've never seen before. I come here today to talk about the Graham-Cassidy bill. And it is the most disgusting, hateful piece of legislation that has ever been introduced in the 30 years that I have been involved in this business. It is not a health care bill. It is simply a vehicle that the Republicans in Congress are using to be able to pass their tax bill. This bill, if passed, would take away $500 for every man, woman, and child in the state of West Virginia in federal health care dollars. $500 for each and every one of us to do one thing, is to give people like Don Blankenship and Jim Justice a big tax cut. The strangest thing about Graham-Cassidy, though, is they're not even pretending that is a health care bill. One of the big supporters said over the weekend, "We promise, so we have to do it. We don't care what's in it." This bill would be devastating to my health care, to your health care, to anybody on Medicare, on Medicaid. As Sarah said, it even digs down to those of you who get your health care through your employer. I started this road of working in healthcare during one of the darkest times of our nation. I thought it was the darkest time. We're matching it now. In the middle of an AIDS crisis, when naive little old me thought that if you were an American, you had access to health care. Well, I learned real big time in January of 1987, that didn't include me. That didn't include people with AIDS. We were relegated to backroom clinics, and I had to even run a drug program out of my refrigerator in my apartment to get treatment drugs to people with AIDS because our government didn't give a crap. We have come a long way since then. A long way. And this bill, if they pass it this week, takes us back to those deep, dark days that we have fought so hard to get out of. If Shelley Moore Capito, Rob Portman, vote for this bill, we have no choice. We have no choice. We must wake up every morning with one commitment, that we need people that care about us serving in Washington, not people who care about whether Don Blankenship gets a tax cut. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Jim, for that. At this time, I would like to introduce Julie Shire, who is a person who lives in our community, who has had some medical issues, and she can describe what this means to her with the bill that is in Congress today, if it passes.
That person who always said, I don't really need health insurance. I was that person who every year the doctor would say, you're perfect, I'll see you next year. I was the person who watched those drug commercials and said, there is no way I would take that stuff. Got up one night, slipped on a rug, broke my back, and it's been downhill from there. After months of excruciating pain, the doctors discovered I have an autoimmune disease called ankylosing spondylitis. I had never heard of this disease. It actually took me a while, and my family a while, to learn how to pronounce it and to spell it. My immune system that I had taken such good care of for years is attacking me. It attacks my spine, causing it to fuse. It attacks my heart, lungs, eyes, feet, most of my joints, and my intestines. They call it the invisible disease because on the outside I don't really look like I have anything wrong with me. There is no cure. I can take a biologic to help slow down the progression of the disease. Yes, one of those nasty drugs I saw in those commercials, I now inject into my body every 2 weeks. By having insurance, I can participate in what they call a drug support program, and the drug company pays whatever my insurance company does not. The cost of the biologic, currently Humira, is $6,000 a month. I've been on the ACA since day one, January 1st, 2014, and I'm very thankful for it. We pay premiums. It's true they've gone up, but not having insurance is not an option for me. There are many out there like me, battling a disease, fighting like hell to have health insurance. So when you hear them say not everyone needs insurance, the healthy shouldn't have to pay for the sick, or a man shouldn't have to pay for women's disease or pregnancy or whatever, if it could happen to me, a former very healthy, very active person, it could happen to you. I was very healthy one day and unhealthy the next. So never say never.
One of the things about being a senior is we need help with the stairs. At this point, I'd like to thank Julie for telling her story and to just think about how much $6,000 a month is just for one drug that you need to have any quality of life. At this time, I'd like to introduce Reverend Janice Hill from the First Christian Church.
Well, I am so sorry to have to be here today. We thought this ungodly, immoral bill was gone forever. Yet here we are again, fighting for our very lives and the lives of those that we love. My daughter was also very healthy. She was a marathon runner and was in the best shape of her entire life, and she got a phone call. They found out that she had high-grade neuroendocrine carcinoma. It's very rare, it's deadly, and she has been fighting this beast for over 4 years. Her latest scan was not a good scan. So the treatment will continue, hoping they can find something to stop this. But my daughter's life matters. Julie's life matters. Everyone's life matters. My daughter is fully employed and is covered by her employer health insurance. Great. As I say, she has been working for 4 years. We hope that she can continue working, but there is definitely no guarantee. Each chemo that she gets makes it cumulative. She's on 2 now and an immunotherapy. They're going to have to change. We do not know how long she will be able to work. So not only am I concerned about the conditions, pre-existing conditions, she's also reached the maximum cap that was there before the Affordable Care Act. I have shown some people a picture of a chemo drug. One bag was $100,000. I don't know many people that could afford that, and if it wasn't for the Affordable Care Act, she would have maxed out and she would not be getting the treatment she's getting today and hopefully tomorrow. We just don't know. So she's alive today because of the Affordable Care Act. Please stop trying to kill our people, because the next phone call could come to you, Senator Capito, could come to you, Senator Portman. You just don't know. And while you have excellent health care, the majority of people cannot afford the diseases they are fighting against. So I beg you, please do the right thing. Consider your constituents. Consider the people that you will be hurting, Senator Capito, when you place your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Hill. These diseases strike, you never know when you will be faced with that phone call. I'd like to introduce now Lydia Cabanchi to talk about health care.
Hi. Today, I'm not talking about my own personal health, but I would like to share my friend Kim Kramer's story. She works for a nonprofit in the area and could not be here today, but I have a letter that she wrote to Senator Capito, and I'd like to read it to you to see how the repeal of the Affordable Care Act will affect her family directly. So often, politics seem to be a distant exercise that is played out in Washington, far from our very real lives. For my family, the healthcare spectacle is quite personal and very potentially life-altering. I cannot begin to express to you the level of stress that many of us have had thrust upon us these past several months by proposals to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. It has begun to feel like a house of cards. I live with my adult son, who was born with Down syndrome. He receives not only medical insurance, but also community services through Medicaid, which has allowed him to have a productive and healthy life. He has companion services through Medicaid, which allows a livelihood for those individuals involved in his activities. They spend several hours each week doing volunteer work at a local senior center's lunch program, the local ARC office, and Goodwill. These programs receive the help of 2 volunteers, he and his companion. They very significantly give back to the community. Because he is appropriately cared for, I as a nurse am able to work full-time in my community at a local nonprofit organization providing services to families who primarily receive their medical care through Medicaid. The program I am employed by is financed by Medicaid. This provides employment for many others. I pay my taxes, save for retirement, and volunteer in services I find dear to my heart. It has given me much peace of mind to know that through my employee insurance, the pre-existing conditions which I have, both thyroid and high blood pressure, are not a barrier to receiving insurance benefits. It has allowed preventative screening, which previously seemed economically oppressive. If I were to personally have a health crisis, I would be able to focus on regaining my health and not fearing a spending cap. Again, these are all because of the ACA. Our healthcare delivery system certainly can be improved. All of us who utilize it know this and would be happy to provide feedback and suggestions. Let's utilize public hearings and adhere to transparency of policies. But what has been proposed will bring about the collapse of our house of cards. My son's quality of life and health insurance, the employment of caregivers, my employment and that of my staff, the volunteer hours, all could come tumbling down. You in Washington may think that the ACA is about dollars and cents. In our home, it is about access to health care, employment, quality of life, and contributing to our community. We will be collateral damage from legislation which has been presented thus far. And she urges Senator Capito to say no to the current repeal bill. And I encourage her as well.
Thank you, Lydia. Again, we don't always think about the consequences of a bill. Not only was it the health care for 2 people, but it was the employment for many. This is what will happen to our community and to our hospitals. At this time, I'd like to introduce Becky Miller, a mother and a retired school teacher.
My name is Becky Miller. In 1985, my husband Arliss and I adopted 2 daughters through the Department of Health and Human Resources. We wanted our daughters to have a stable family life and not to remain in the foster care system. The girls had pre-existing conditions and could not be placed on our state insurance. We received a subsidized adoption with Medicaid. One daughter has developmental delays and is blind. Our other daughter has intellectual and developmental disabilities, epilepsy, and now in her adult life suffers from mental illness. Over the years, their needs have increased due to their conditions requiring more medical attention in the form of hospitalizations, surgeries, therapies, and medications. The girls are served through the Aged and Disabled Waiver Program and the Title 19 Waiver Program for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. These Medicaid-funded programs allow our daughters to participate in community life as independently as possible. Without these programs, how will our daughters be cared for, and what will their futures be like? My husband and I are aging, and we have our own medical conditions. How can we provide for our girls? Through this proposed medical bill, Medicaid expansion and subsidy funding will be cut sharply compared to current spending and going to 0 in 10 years. How will we provide for our loved ones and all persons in our society who depend on Medicaid for their needs? It is our responsibility and your responsibility, Senator Capito, to care for and support them as members of our society. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. Again, we never know when we make a decision what happens later on in life. What do? We've heard these stories, we've heard about the bill. What can we do? Well, what we can do is call our senators and tell them no. Kill the bill, senators. Senator Capito, Senator Portman, you need to kill this bill. Senators need to listen to the voters, listen to our voice, listen to us. Listen to the voters, not the donors. It is time to call, and it's time to call often. Make your voice heard with your senators to kill this bill. And thank you for coming. And thank you to all the speakers.
Vote no, Capito!
Vote no,